Representative Schlegel, thank you for that. Back on House Bill 7.
Okay, so member, if you have any questions, that's it.
Representative Willard for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Rep. Schlegel. Couple of questions. Right now, can district attorneys charge people who have stolen a car, carjacking, as a charge for armed robbery or for first-degree robbery? Can't they already do that?
I think they can, as long as they're using a weapon, but not all carjackings use a weapon. Although I know Lauren Lampert with the DA's Association said the actual weapon is the 30,000-pound car, which most of the women that we've heard the horrific stories, it was actually their bodily injury was due to the car.
Well, so I kind of agree with DA Lambert there. I would assume that heavy car would be a weapon. And so in the case of armed robbery, they can charge up to 99 years. In the case of first-degree robbery, they can charge up to 40 years. So why do we actually need this bill?
I'm not sure if any of them have actually charged, and I would have to go and look, but I think most of the ones that were armed robbery were because they used a gun.
Okay, all right. So in this bill, what we're doing is increasing the mandatory minimums here?
So for carjacking, we're increasing the mandatory minimum. It's just a mere 2 years. Now it's 5. And then so if there's severe bodily injury, it goes from 10, the minimum is 20 years with a maximum of 30 years.
So without bodily injury, what's the sentence discretion right now? Is it 2 to 20?
It's 5 to 20.
It's 5?
Yes, correct. It's 2 to 20, but with this bill, it will be 5 to 20.
So a DA can already sentence somebody to 5 years, 10 years if they want.
Correct.
A judge could do that.
That's correct, but they can also do 2, which is not acceptable for carjacking.
But you don't think our judges should be able to look at circumstances of a situation and render
While I
the
appreciate
correct
the discretion of judges
verdict?
for sure, I also think when it comes to carjacking, a minimum of 2 years is not acceptable. I think that there's a huge increase of risk to the victim, as you saw a lot of the stories. And because of that, and with the huge increase, I do think we need to increase the minimums.
Did you know, I think we both will agree that the carjacking issue plaguing, parts of our state is out of control right now.
I'd agree with that.
Can you explain how this bill would reduce those carjacking attempts and successful carjackings?
Well, I think anytime in human behavior, when you hold somebody accountable and you actually give them consequences, that should deter that, right? And that we're actually going to have severe consequences for something that we deem totally unacceptable, like carjackings. And so, yes, that's my intention for this bill.
Okay. Do you have data showing that those increased penalties will deter behavior and reduce that particular crime?
I do not, but if that was the sort of reasoning, then we should just get rid of all penalties and just not have sentencing for any of our laws.
Well, I would disagree with that. Do you have a concern that with bills like this, plus other things that we're dealing with this session, that our prison population will explode to a point where it's a financial burden, a serious financial burden to the state?
I would think if people choose not to carjack, then they will not be going to prison.
I know, but that's not, could you answer that question? Do you have any concern that
my
this
hope
bill,
is to
coupled with other bills that we're dealing with this session, will cause an explosion in our prison population, which will lead to a financial burden on the state?
Well, I think my hope is for me as an author, and I think for the other authors here, is that we're actually going to deter people from, because what we're doing now is obviously not working. So I believe that what we're trying to do is deter. And so if people aren't committing the crimes, then they're not going to jail.
Do you think that, is this bill targeted for juveniles?
No, this bill is not targeted. My last year bill was targeted for juveniles.
Okay. Do you think that the majority of people who will go out and carjack know what they could be sentenced to? Do you think they're aware of that information?
I would not think they were, but I would think they were aware
So
that
how
it's
does an
illegal.
increased penalty serve as a stronger deterrent to prohibit that behavior, to reduce that behavior, if they don't even know about the stronger penalty?
Well, I think it's both. It's deterrent and it's also a punishment, clearly, right? So if you're in jail, you're not going to be carjacking, because a lot of these carjackers don't just do it once. I know with the carjacker who carjacked the DA in New Orleans, I think that person they surmise went and carjacked another woman. So I don't think they're like a one and done kind of criminal.
And did you know, I would probably agree with all of that. Goes back to the question I asked you before. Do you think that increasing penalties here is going to reduce the number of carjackings that we experience as a
I
state?
do. I would not be bringing the bill if I didn't.
Can you explain why do you think it'll reduce them, the number of carjackings?
I think sentences are, I mean, that's what they're there for, right? Obviously for public safety. I mean, the reason why we have laws and that they actually have sentences is because we want to deter people from doing crime.
Final question. Do you think that the people carjacking know the potential sentence that they would receive?
Well, I hope for their own sake they learn it after this bill passes.
Thank you.
Representative Mandy Landry on a question.
Yes, just to follow up on Matt and a couple of things you said. You said 2 years is unacceptable. Is that a personal opinion? What does the word unacceptable mean? Where did it come from?
Well, I think it's unacceptable to the public. When I survey my district, I know hands down the number one issue I heard is for people for asking me to address crime and making more severe penalties for the issues that are plaguing us right now.
So homeowners insurance and crime are the issues I hear the most. But does anyone in the public even understand what the minimum is? And were they telling you that 5 years is acceptable or 10 years is acceptable, or just we need to stop this crime?
I would think the public, I mean, if someone wants to commit a crime, I would think they would want to go learn about what their penalties are going to be.
That's not reality.
Well, reality is that carjackers are carjacking. You can't turn on the TV without hearing another instance of a carjacking hurting somebody. And so that is reality.
I understand. So would you agree while someone knows when they're doing something wrong, but that they would not necessarily know what exactly the penalty is?
I think that this epidemic of carjackings hits the media quite a bit, and so I think the public will catch on really quickly. I mean, I know in this crime session, the media is definitely educating the public on it. I would think that the public will get to know it pretty quickly.
We'll disagree on that one. Again, as I asked Rep. Johnson, and there's a lot of lawyers in here, and we fully understand judicial discretion, and sometimes it goes in the other direction of what we're asking for. But why do you think we need to remove further judges' discretion and double the requirement in this particular instance? Half extra question. Are you hearing from judges that they need that to happen?
So I do think judges still have discretion on both of these. So you have between 5 to 20, the judge can decide, and between 20 and 30. We, as the legislature, gets to decide what we think the minimum is. And so if the legislature thinks moving it up to 5 years is the appropriate step, then that's where we'll go.
Is this amount of time that we're changing to, while you were working on this with us and the district attorneys and others, that suggested that this is the appropriate amount of time, or statistics or data that suggested that this would affect this crime from happening, the frequency of this crime from happening?
So what is your question?
Sorry, was this based on some data or specific observations or another state where the minimum sentence was doubled or more than doubled, that showed an effect on the crime?
I did look at laws of other states, and we seemed pretty in line with the changes that we're making. But I mean, my understanding is the District Attorneys Association, the Sheriff's Attorney Association agrees with this, and so I think that the people that actually do this for a living every day knows, and so.
Well, they have different reasons to agree with this than other people, but this number to me seems arbitrary. And I guess final question, I'm wondering, why did you pick 5? Why not 7? Why not 3, 10? Why 5?
Well, it pretty much almost doubled it, and so that was part of a rationale. But 2 is just not acceptable, and if our body members thinks it is, then you vote no.
Final question. I mean, the reason we have discretion is, while we know that judges can go much higher than this, there will be the occasional situation where someone was in the car, right, and wasn't sure what was going to happen, versus the driver who planned it and had the weapon and targeted the person. I mean, it just seems like if a judge views the whole situation, all the circumstances, thinks that that person should not be punished as severely, why would we want to take that from them?
Well, I think there's discretion all the way. I mean, the DA still has the discretion on what they charge this person if you're saying they're innocent and they're in the car or whatnot. So you have DA discretion and you still have judicial discretion. You still have ranges of sentences for this law.
But we are doubling them, as you stated.
We're moving it from 2 to 5, that's, yes.
And the
For the
other one
minimum of
from-
carjacking. And then if there's severe bodily injury, it does, the maximum goes to the minimum.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Wilford Carter for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Schlegel, I don't want you to take this wrong way, because you have been most of the bill handlers have been very patient and trying to answer our questions. And if you notice, most of the questions been asked in these series of bills, these criminal reform bills, have been mostly asked by Democrats, okay? And your bill increased punishment, like most of the bills we've been hearing, and your bill talks about serious injury, for example. And serious injury is not defined in the bill, but is it defined in the bill?
It's defined in the statute, 14,
Right.
yeah.
So the bill refers to code 14, revised statute 14?
Right, and so in code, if you want me, I
The
have the
criminal code.
definition if you want me
No,
to.
but most of the time, as I understand it, is in your bill, it says serious injuries. But in a lot of the cases where it's enhanced punishment for serious injuries, defined as a person losing consciousness, being serious injury to a loss of a limb, a threat of life. Okay, so that's how it's defined in many of the statutes. So that's how your bill defines serious injury?
Right, so so my understanding is that definition in Title 14 would apply for the serious bodily injury.
So if a person pulls a lady out of a carjacker, and she hits her head, okay, and she sustains some injuries to her head, so the statute that defines what is serious injury will apply. So she have to have unconsciousness, you have to have a threat of life, loss of life, or loss of limb, that sort of thing, all right? And this bill, as all the other bills, correct me if I'm wrong, they intended to correct the problem in Louisiana of high crime.
Correct.
I noticed the governor spoke about 3 cities in the state that has in the top 10 in the criminal top 10 cities in the country. So you're trying to address this problem.
Yes.
So what about this bill, what makes you think that if you increase incarceration, you're going to reduce crime? What evidence do you have? What study do you have that would show that if you increase crime, incarceration for violation of the criminal code, that you would reduce crime? I don't see how you get that, where it comes from.
Well, Judge Carter, I know you probably heard me talking to Rep. Willard and answering that question. I do believe that when you hold people accountable, those are things. So what we've been doing the last 8 years has helped, because crime has just gotten worse. And I know specifically in my area, you can't turn on the TV without hearing of another incident of carjacking.
What I'm saying is, I agree with you that we do have problems with crime in this state. But you know, we've been for a long time one of the highest incarcerated population in the world per capita. Did you know that?
I have heard that, yes, yeah.
At one time, I think they still are. Louisiana is the highest incarcerated population per capita in the whole world, not just in the United States, okay, in the whole world. But yet, with all this incarceration we have, do we still have, is there any relationship to the incarceration to the reduction of crime in Louisiana? There apparently is not.
Well, I could say when you have three of the most dangerous cities in the country, you're probably going to have the highest incarceration rate, just because you have the three most dangerous cities. So I would think that those two would go hand in hand.
But you don't address it, you're trying to address it by increasing incarceration, and one don't relate to the other, what I'm trying to, but my point is, do you recognize, you seem to think that if you incarcerate more people, you will reduce crime, and that's not how it works in no study that I've seen, no study. So I'm just curious whether or not you got benefit of a study I don't have. I do have benefit of a study that was done in, and I want to know if you know about this study, that was done in Europe, and I think it's Italy, where when a person is incarcerated, the first thing they do is send them to a facility.
Is this a question?
Yeah, this is a question. I want to know if you know about this study.
Okay, I
This
do not
study
know
relates
about
to
the
your
study.
bill.
I do not.
You
To
trying
answer
to
your
reduce
question,
crime.
I do not know about your
You're
study.
trying to reduce crime, I'm trying to reduce crime, okay? We both are interested in the same thing, the reduction of crime. My disagreement with you is, and I'm trying to get, if you've done the study that I've done, because I've been looking at this criminal thing for quite a long time, and I want to share this with you to see if you know about this study. That the first thing they do is find out why this person got in a criminal violation with the law. Did he have a problem as a childhood? Did he have
Is there another
training?
question for me, or because I
I'm
already told you
asking you, you know-
I do not know about the. I do not.
You don't know about the study?
I do not.
Okay. And so you believe, but you cannot tell me why you think crime is going to go down if you increase incarceration. You can't tell me why.
I do believe that's why I'm carrying the bill.
What's your basis to believe that, what I'm saying? What is your basis to believe that works? It hadn't worked in the past 50, 75 years in this state. What's your basis of believing that?
Because I believe when you hold people accountable, I think it's both. You deter crime, and then you also hold people accountable. Just somebody gets murdered, it's also a punishment,
Okay.
right?
So-
There's both. You're
Okay, so
trying to
going
deter people from murdering, but you're also punishing the murderer for murdering.
I agree that punishment has to be part of the criminal, of our correction of crime. We're not disagreeing with that. But the amount of punishment don't necessarily relate to the reduction of crime, is all I'm saying. Now, do you know how many people incarcerated in Louisiana right now?
I do not.
Over 31,000 people, okay? Under state law, okay? You know what percentage the black population is in Louisiana?
I do not.
33%,
33%, yes,
little
I
over
do know that.
33.45%, okay? You know how many blacks are incarcerated in Louisiana prison? What percentage?
I do not.
62%. So are you suggesting, or you're not suggesting by your bill, that blacks commit more crime, so we're going to increase crime so they be incarcerated longer? So what are you suggesting by the bill?
I am not suggesting any of that. What I'm suggesting is that in my area, carjacking is a huge issue, and I know the people I represent want me to address this issue, and that's what I'm doing. Along with, I think most of the state wants us to address this issue.
You have any idea what would be the increased cost of the whole package of bills we're doing? I mean, it's the governor's package. The whole package of bills, you have an idea how much more it would cost the Department of Correction to carry out all these bills we're doing?
Well, I've not calculated everybody's fiscal note, but what I'll tell you is if people don't commit crime, then there will be no cost. But there is a huge cost when they do, like Linda Fricky, who lost her life when she was trapped with the car, or someone who was actually ran over with the car and had to learn how to walk. That's what I'm trying to address here, that those instances don't happen anymore.
And I agree with you with it. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just trying to find out how you come up with the conclusion, and you apparently cannot tell me, with the fact that if you increase incarceration, we're already the highest incarcerated people in the world per capita, we're going to reduce our crime when our crime is still high. We need to do something. Maybe we need to try something else.
Well, I agree. We need to hold people accountable, and we also need to love them enough to help. I also care about issues like that with education and mental health. So,
Do you know how
but
much-
it's got to be both. You can't just, they're not mutually exclusive. You got to do both.
Do you know how much of the state budget is devoted to rehabilitation or to finding out why people go to jail in the first place? What caused them to commit crime? You know, you got any information studies on that?
I do not know the financial on that.
So
But I do know we passed JRR to invest in all of these things.
Do you know what percentage of Louisiana prisoners have a rehabilitation program while they're incarcerated? Some type of rehabilitation or finding out why they got incarcerated in the first place. You know what percentage we have of inmates, Louisiana inmates, that are attempted some type of rehabilitation? What percentage that is?
I do not, but I'm a big believer in reentry court. My husband brought it to Jefferson Parish, so I'm a big believer in that too.
1%. Do you know how many state prisoners are incarcerated in parish jails? What percentage of the prison population is incarcerated in a state institution or a parish jail?
I do not know that information.
Well, do you know that most of the prisoners, state prisoners, are incarcerated in parish jails? And they don't get no rehabilitation. They don't get nothing but they be getting paid for a head for be locked up, which I'm all in favor of locking people up and do wrong. So I'm just trying to give you some ideas as to that this is not going to solve our problem. We still going to be the #1 incarcerated people in the whole world, and we're not going, by doing this, going to reduce our violations any much at all.
Thank you, Judge Carter. So I guess you're a no on this?
Yeah.
Representative Marcel for a question.
Thank you, Representative Schlegel. First of all, I want to acknowledge that we do have a carjacking problem that we need to figure out how to solve it. The question becomes, how do we get there? And for me, did you know that doubling the sentence causes me some angst? If you were just trying to increase it maybe somewhat, it may not be so bad, did you know? But I'm going to focus on something else. He talked about the cost. The cost, because tell me if I'm wrong, your bill increases it from 2 years to 5 years. So it's over 2 times more than what it is, correct?
That's correct.
And that increase to house that person in a facility, do you know what that cost would be up to 13 years? Because I think that's what your bill does.
Yeah, that's on my fiscal. That's on the
Additional
fiscal note.
13 years, correct?
Yeah.
Do you know what that cost is per offender?
So I'm hoping that there is no cost because people stop carjacking. I'm not concerned with the cost because I care about the cost that it is to the victims that we hear on the nightly news all the time. That's the only cost I care about. That's the cost that I care about, and that's why I'm here.
I understand.
And so people stop carjacking, there will not be a cost to our state.
Okay, but did you know that it's going to cost us over $500,000 to incarcerate each person that we're talking about putting behind bars? And did you know that I'm not against punishing people for their crimes? The question becomes, could we deter crime by financing much less than that for that same individual to get an education or to get a trade? Did you know?
I believe in education, I believe in getting people a trade, and then I believe in when they carjack someone that they have a sentence of a minimum of 5 years.
And you know, I saw the family that came here and the ones who suffered from this. And my heart goes out to them, as I'm sure yours does.
It does.
But there is already, did you know, statute that covers them for that particular crime of carjacking because somebody was injured. Is that your appreciation?
Well, I'm sure if they killed them, yeah, I mean, you could charge them with murder.
Even
so.
if they injured them, there is a tool in the DA's toolbox where they can address it. Is that your appreciation?
I'm assuming that they have many tools, and I'm going to give them one more.
So, in your estimation, increasing the time is all that I see really happens in your bill.
That's right.
And I guess my question is, did you give any thoughts to the victims? You know, there's a victim fund in Louisiana, did you know?
I did know.
Nothing in your bill gives the victims any money for doctors, for, therapy, for anything. And did you know that if we're really concerned about the victims, we might want to put something in the bill that addresses them being paid versus us paying $500,000, over $500,000 per person. Did you know?
Yeah, so, and I can appreciate that. I do care about the current victims, and what this bill specifically is for is to make sure there are no more victims.
But realistically, I've been down here. This is my 9th year. Did you know I've never seen us pass a bill, whether it's increasing, and then the crime just stops because we passed the bill. Did you know? So I don't foresee carjacking just going away. Obviously, we need to address the issues, did you know, that the underlying causes and punishment. I think we have to do both. But did you know that I've never seen us pass a bill and the whole Louisiana go, whoa, they just passed a bill. We're not going to break in stores anymore. We're not, whatever that is. Did you know?
I'm not a huge fan of did you know, because I don't think it's a question. I think it's a statement, but clearly you know.
Yes, ma'am. And I'm really, Representative Schlegel, I understand where you're trying to go with this. I'm just asking to be realistic about it and put some money in the underlying causes of crime and not all of the money going to the private prisons, which we will have to build.
Questions and answers.
Did you know?
I agree, it needs to be both, for sure.
Thank you.
Representative Romero for a question.
Chairwoman Schlegel,
Yes.
is it in your attention as authoring this bill to bring awareness to the seriousness of carjacking?
Yes. This is
It
my
is your
second
hope-
one on carjacking.
Is it your hope that by raising the penalties, the people that are thinking about contemplating carjacking will look at it and go, maybe I shouldn't do that?
Correct. So
Thank
last year
you.
I passed one where juveniles were getting probation for carjacking. So again, the minimums are just not acceptable. But I appreciate
Thank you.
it. Thank you.
Representative Lyons for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Schlegel, do you know the average age of an individual who are actually committing a carjacking?
I do not know the average age, but I do know juveniles obviously commit carjacking. That's
So when
why
you
I
say,
did my bill last year.
so would it be fair to say when you say juvenile, we're talking between the age of 12 and 17 maybe? Is that fair?
I would not want to answer because I don't know the statistics. I do know both juveniles and adults carjack. So I would say both.
Okay, so, and while I'm asking that question, well, I'm gonna give another question, I'm sorry. With that being the case, would you not be concerned that if it's juveniles, that there has to be some condition that will put them in that state other than just wanting to be criminals? And I know you can surmise that or not, but you realize that they're making choices that they're not the best choices, but they could make better choices.
I would think they could definitely make better choices for sure.
And with that being said, I'm looking at your bill, and my concern is, first of all, we all are burdened by the crime of carjacking. In the metropolitan area, which you and I do live in, it is an issue, and mine, like everyone else's constituency, is really tired of that particular pace. So that's not about that. But I'm concerned with the 20 years without benefit of parole or probation for juveniles. That's the part that gives me pause.
This isn't for juveniles.
Sorry?
This bill is not for juveniles.
No, but the persons that you just agreed to tell me were committing those crimes were juveniles. Was that correct?
No, I said juveniles commit carjacking, but this bill is for adults who commit carjacking.
But I asked you particularly were the large number of crimes of carjacking being committed by juveniles predominantly, and you agreed that juveniles were doing it. Not maybe at any number, but we can say largely that juveniles are the ones committing those crimes, which, as you say, this bill is for adults possibly committing adult crimes.
I would think this is for anyone who's over 18.
Okay, so is there a separate category for a juvenile who commits a carjacking?
Yes, I actually worked on that bill last time. Juveniles were able to get probation for carjacking. And so we passed that law last time where juveniles for carjacking.
So, but aren't we now tying with legislation now that juveniles are going to be charged as adults when they commit adult crimes?
I'm assuming if that bill passed, I mean, that's not current law.
But that would change the perspective of our conversation, basically, because that's what the result would be, that juveniles would be charged as adults in a carjacking situation after that bill passes.
Well, depending on if that bill passes and I mean, I can't really speak to a law that's not into place.
Well, I'm going to say that it's going to pass. And when it does pass, that's what the situation will be. So my question to you is, my concern is, we have juveniles who have, with this bill, they have no opportunity for rehabilitation whatsoever. Because you're going to take a 14 or 15-year-old kid who makes that mistake, and whatever reason they did it, they done it.
Wait, are you saying the bill that's coming is
Well,
gonna
I'm saying
add
that
a
when this
40
bill passes, that in any condition, whether you're a juvenile or an adult, this is an adult crime, because this bill is for adults.
lines, I would want to just stick with what my bill says.
Okay,
and
well, I'm saying what your bill says.
hypotheticals, because that would be something then you could discuss with whoever carries the bill on the juveniles, that, because my bill specifically talks about people 18 and over and when they commit carjacking and do severe bodily injury, like what is happening right now in our areas.
Okay, so let's stay on your bill. I'm going to assume for my own references that the other bill is going to pass. But this bill particularly says that individual who commits a carjacking for the first time, well, it doesn't say time, but they're going to have from 5 years to no more than 20 years without benefit of probation or parole. And I'm saying that we have juveniles who commit those crimes just as you just agreed to. And my pause is that juveniles at that age will never get an opportunity under this bill to have any rehabilitation until they're an adult, which means that, yes, you're going to stop that individual from committing a carjacking for the next 20 years, but you're not going to rehab him because he's going to be committed to that particular place in imprisonment at that time. So when he is released 20 years later, you're going to have a young man or woman who turns into an adult.
So is
with
this
no
a question
ability-
or for me?
The question is that a concern of yours, that we're going to release, and we're going to take an individual juvenile and release him into society as a hardened criminal 20 years later?
I would say that's a question for someone who's carrying correct the age. Or currently, right now, what I can discuss is what is in my bill. And
Okay.
what is in my bill for carjacking for sentencing when there's severe bodily injury.
Okay, so the next question I have is, and I appreciate your answer. Thank you for
Okay,
answering
yeah,
that
I
question.
want to answer all the questions.
Right. But when we say carjackings, when we have a gun is used, are you aware that that's not a carjacking?
I understand that the district attorney can charge them with armed robbery, and that's 10 to 99 years.
Yes.
So if we're talking about long sentences, 10 to 99, this is very reasonable.
Okay, and I just wanted to make sure that I asked the question about how we feel, because there's members in here who may not have been part of your bill last year, which I was in support of. But my concern is now that I asked the questions that they may or may not know or want to know, is that we want to deter crime.
We do.
We want to prevent it from happening. And I think earlier on, the conversation was, if you remember, that I think it was Pro Tem Johnson that said that we don't want, our hope is that individuals consider the crime, the penalties of the crime, before they make them, correct? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay,
I
so
heard the conversation.
you heard the conversation,
Couple hours
and you
ago.
feel the same way, right?
So say it again?
You
What-
feel the same way, that you would hope an individual will consider the penalties or the consequences of their actions before they commit those crimes.
I mean, that's human nature. I try to teach that to my son, is that you have consequences to your actions. And hopefully that they know them and they don't make those.
Yes, and that's what this legislation is about. We want to prevent, or we want to reduce crime. But I'm saying to you, in my question form, did you know that when we take young juveniles and we immediately sentence them to long sentences, mandatory sentences, without the ability of rehabilitation, that we do more harm to society on the back end than we do on the front end. Did you know that?
Well, yeah, so I know that the juveniles that carjacked Linda Fricky and tied her, she got caught in the car, got a really long sentence because they murdered her because they were carjacking. And so that's what I'm trying to prevent, a crime that there's a huge propensity for victims to get gravely and severely injured. That is what we're talking about here. I know we could talk about so many other things, but that's what I'm trying to prevent here. So
Yes,
then
but did
juveniles
you-
don't have
sorry.
to go to jail for murder because they didn't carjack in the first place.
I agree with you. But did you know that there are other circumstances, some with less egregious activity than this crime, which is horrible, and I do feel for that family, particularly that are going to fall under the same category with this bill.
I'm sorry. I know you're saying a lot of statements, so I need to hear the question.
You mentioned the Fricky case as the case on shelf that we're actually doing it and basically saying that we don't want those to happen. I agree with you.
Right.
But I'm saying that there are cases that does not involve bodily injury. There are cases that may involve bodily injury, but not as horrible as that particular case.
And I
that
wish we could,
juveniles
I
may
wish we could
participate in.
determine which carjacking somebody's going to get hurt or not, or which carjacking the woman's going to be stuck in her car or not, or which one's going to be run over, but we can't. That's why I'm trying to prevent carjackings from happening in the first place, because you can't. It's an egregious crime that you can't determine because there's just a huge propensity because you got a 3,000 vehicle that somebody's either trying to stay with or getting pushed out of.
I agree with you. That is horrible in that case. But I want to just, did you know that I wanted to make sure that I asked a question in regards to rehabilitation processes when we put these sentences in there for that particular case. And even if it's not just a juvenile, it could be a 19-year-old who will be an adult, which would be a middle-aged man when he comes out of prison at that time. We have to be able to, if you would agree, to have some form of rehabilitation for those particular people. If not, we're going to be just putting people back in jail again to stay there for long periods of time, and hopefully that when you and I are out of this office, that we see them on the streets as wonderful, law-abiding citizens. But I can tell you this, the data shows that that doesn't happen. Thank you for answering my
Lyons,
questions.
and I know you know me, I care about education, mental health. My family cares about reentry court. So I think it's all of these things that we have to do, for sure.
Thank you for answering my questions. Thank you.
Representative Newell for a question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I was trying to give the Speaker Pro Tem a chance to walk in between us to get him seat before I started. I hadn't pressed my button until you made the comment. Are you aware that in the issue of the carjacking that involved the death of Miss Linda Fricky, that DA Jason Williams had the discretion to charge those teens as adults? Are you aware of that?
That's my understanding.
And I'm going to say that not only is that your understanding, that's a fact.
Yeah.
That he was able to charge them with the discretion we give to our DAs, to charge those juveniles as adults. And that is what he did. Not because they
Serious
were
crime.
carjacking, but because there was great bodily harm, death, to Linda Fricky. So
If they didn't carjack her, then there would not be any bodily harm.
that's not what I said. I said about the fact that he had the discretion. My point was the discretion that he has to charge them as adults and then to give suggest the heightened sentencing period. In addition to that, did you know, you don't like them, but I'm going to use them. Did you know that the issue that most of us have brought up about this whole session not addressing the prevention of crime, Do you understand that that's an issue that most of us have?
Oh, I mean, 100%, but I think this session right now is dedicated to obviously addressing a different portion of that.
But
I
it's
think
a-
there's many of us, I would probably say everybody in this room wants to also fix all the other issues. I know the governor cares about education, and
Yeah,
that's,
I'm not concerned about what his concerns are right now. My concerns are with this session that is saying that we are here to discuss crime prevention. Would you agree that that's what we're supposed to be doing?
yeah, I would think that would be part of it.
And with those juveniles who carjacked and killed Miss Linda Fricky, do you know what time of day that happened?
I think it was during the day.
I'm sorry?
Was it during the day?
It was during
Yeah.
the day.
Yeah.
It was about at 10:45 a.m., did you know?
I knew it was early.
But none of the bills that we have are addressing some of the root causes of crime, did you know? Particularly around education and strengthening that education system that I hope you know that is a
Representative
concern
Newell,
of mine.
Representative Newell, I would ask that you keep the questions
you-
within the bill.
Did you know? And that's what I'm addressing.
Thank you.
The fact that it was a carjacking, but it happened in the morning, and the DA had the discretion to charge those juveniles as an adult. I'm just hashing over my points that I made already. But did you know that this bill, through your discussion and through my readings, did you know that I have the appreciation that it does not address any type of deterrence? Did you know that right now, well, you do know because it's your bill, 2 years is the minimum. But we see that it's rising. Do you really, in your heart of hearts, think that this 5 years is going to make a difference?
I would not be bringing this bill if I didn't. I don't bring bills that I think aren't meaningful or don't do anything. That is definitely not what I do.
And for you personally, I take that. But realistically, did you know that I don't see where this alone is going to stop this carjacking? Can you appreciate the fact of us being these colleagues, of us both living in the greater New Orleans area? This is an issue.
No, I can appreciate you will be a no as well. I could understand that.
But also, I would like you to come to this appreciation as well that we need to address the underlying causes of this. And I would hope that you also appreciate the fact
appreciate
that
that.
we give our DAs a lot of discretion in charging, being able to charge people as adults already, or to be able to increase recommendations to the judges to increase the sentences or to give higher sentences than the minimums that are provided by law. Are you appreciative of that discretion the DAs have?
I believe that DAs have discretion. They should. They should have many tools in their arsenal, and judges should as well.
I'm glad we agree on that. But this bill, you thought it was a good bill. I don't think it does enough.
I still think it's a good bill.
Of course you would. And thank you for answering my questions. But I just needed to bring it to your attention that it wasn't the fact that they just carjacked, but
I know,
they
but
were charged as
the murder
adults.
was led because of a carjacking. If there was no carjacking, she'd still be alive.
And if we had a better school system, them children would have been in school and not on the street carjacking nobody. Thank you, Representative Schlegel. Thank you very much, Speaker.
Representative Amade for the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I consider it disturbing how there's such a great focus on the incarcerated numbers when what we're trying to do here is focus on the extreme number of people committing the crime which results in an extreme number of victims of the crime. Getting a criminal off the street longer ensures a longer period of time where that particular criminal won't be committing the crime. I don't think we need a study to say that. That's just logical. It's really shocking to me that our current law only provides for a 2-year sentence for carjacking when you understand that the average car stolen is not an old car falling apart, but a car that's reasonably new and expected to go when you press the accelerator. I'd have to say that many of those are financed, and the average car loan is more than 2 years. It's more like 4 to 6 years. So I rise in favor of this bill. I think it's only reasonable to have the penalty for the crime be a little bit longer than a car note, and especially when it includes bodily harm. So thank you, Madam Chair, for your bill.
Reverend Schlegel, you have the right to close.
Okay, so member, I just want you to know that I'm not creating a new law. This is already a law that we really don't want people to carjack, right? So it just increases the penalties and hopefully deters crime and prevent no more victims. And I ask for favorable passage.
Rep. Schlegel moves the final passage of the bill. If you're in favor, vote yea. If those opposed, vote no. Clerk will open the machine. Emerson, yea. Domain, yea. Bayham, yea. Are you through vote? Muscarello, yea. Cruz, yea. Recorder, yea. Mellarine, yea. Are you through voting? The clerk will close the machine. We have 89 yeas and 15 nays. The bill is finally passed. Representative Schlegel moves to adopt the title and moves to reconsider the vote by which the bill finally passed and lay that motion on the table without objection. Show order. We open the machine for co-authors. Members, are you through voting? Robbie Carter, yea. The clerk will close the machine. We have 48 co-authors. Next bill.
House Bill 8 by Representative Schlegel, Title 40, Controlled Dangerous Substances, provide for unlawful distribution of fentanyl to minors, provides for penalty and definitions. And Mr. Speaker and members, on behalf of the Bureau, Representative Horton sends up technical amendments.
Without objection. Rep. Schlegel on your bill.
So, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, HB 8 creates the punishment for drug dealers who send fentanyl that appeals to children. So, in August 2022, the DEA sent out a warning of a dangerous new trend used by drug cartels to sell highly addictive and potentially deadly fentanyl to make it look like candy to children. And so it's what the media sort of dubbed as rainbow fentanyl. And according to the DEA, these pills designed to hook children have been spotted in nearly 24 states. So with HB 8, if you're selling fentanyl in Louisiana where there's a reasonable appeal to a minor in the shape, color, taste, or design of the fentanyl, your punishment will be severe with a sentence range of 25 to 99 years without benefit of probation, parole, or suspension of sentence, which is a sentence that's similar to other horrific crimes that involve hurting a child. So many of you know I'm super passionate about protecting children, and many of you know that fentanyl, we passed a bill last year where fentanyl remains our deadliest drug threat in our country. It is 50 times more potent than heroin and 100 times more potent than morphine. And we all know that even a small amount of fentanyl can kill, so you can just imagine designing that drug to actually appeal to children. So there's no reason anyone should be selling this drug, but there's absolutely no reason to be selling it where it appeals to children. And I believe we need to send a clear message to drug dealers that this is absolutely not acceptable. And there is a technical amendment, if I could offer that up. So this technical amendment...
Madam Clerk, on the amendment.
Mr. Speaker and members, Representative Schlegel offers up one-page set of amendments, set number 104.
Rep. Schlegel on your amendment.
So if you notice the title and the heading on the bill, it says distribution to minors. That's not, it's not accurate when it comes to the substance of the bill, because it has to do with fentanyl when it appeals to children. So that's what the technical amendments do. And do you have any questions?
Is there any objection to the adoption of the amendment? Without objection, so ordered. On your bill. Rep. Willard on a question?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Rep. Schlegel, I'm just trying to get more information on this bill. So is minor defined here? Is that going to be anybody under the age of 18?
So, and no, it doesn't have to do with minors. It has anything to do with the packaging that appeals to children. So think about if they're designing the fentanyl to look like Skittles or Sweet Tarts. So you can use your common sense on like what would appeal to, and I think they give some examples if the fentanyl is like in different colors or shapes, like animals, anything that reasonably would appeal to a child.
You don't think that's a bit too subjective here? I mean, because we're talking about a sentence from 25 to 99 years, and we don't really have tight guardrails on what that reasonable appeal would be. I mean, you have character here, right? But, like, for instance...
So, yeah, no, it gives the examples like the shape of an animal, a vehicle, or a person, or a character, or, you know, it would be like SpongeBob, or any kind of food or beverage that a minor would commonly, like I said, like Sweet Tarts or Skittles.
Well,
I think
guess
what the DEA was saying too around like the rainbow fentanyl was done in different colors and it looked like sidewalk chalk, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I get where you're going at, but I think it's subjective. Like, for instance, my brother liked G.I. Joe growing up. So if they did one mimicking G.I. Joe, that might be attractive to him.
Right, I would think G.I. Joe would appeal to, if you made fentanyl to look like G.I. Joe, that's going to probably appeal to a child to pick it up.
So do you think that adults and children are attracted to different things, or do you think there's overlap there?
Oh, I'm sure there's overlap. Skittles definitely appeals to me, so I mean.
Does this have to do with if a kid in school was caught with 3 pills that turned out to be fentanyl, would they be subject to a 25 to 99 year sentence?
This doesn't have to do with possession. This has to do
Okay.
with a 4967A, which is
What does that say?
the selling. That's the selling portion of our drug laws.
28 grams or more?
Manufacturing, it has nothing to do with the weight. So if you look at, so this is for anyone who violates that portion of our drug laws. So if you look at manufacture, distribute, so to produce, manufacture, distribute, dispense, or possess with the intent to produce, manufacture, distribute, or dispense.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Rep. Freeman for a question.
Thank you, Representative. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and Representative Schlegel. I'm also trying to understand, listening to Rep. Willard's questions, but when it says a detectable amount of fentanyl, I mean, I understand your description of what they look like in this bill, but what is a detectable amount?
So if it has any fentanyl in it, if it's fentanyl.
Okay, so I have, I don't know, 6 or 8 high schools in my district, ranging from public to high-end privates. If a high school student sells 3 pills to another high school student and they don't know that fentanyl's in the drug, would that high school student, I'm talking like a 15 or 16-year-old, would they be responsible to be prosecuted under this law?
So first, I would tell those students not to sell drugs. So that,
Well,
that
I
would
know,
be
but
the
they
first
do.
thing I would say.
I
Except
agree.
if fentanyl is distributed in a manner that appeals to children, that's when this law would apply.
So if a young person who didn't know that there was a fentanyl detectable in a pill they sold, they would end up in a 25-year sentence potentially?
So my bill doesn't change anything on intent when it comes to our very well-established drug laws. So it doesn't change anything what I just discussed with Willard when it comes to 967A does not change intent. All it does is when someone violates that in a manner in which the fentanyl is appeals to children. That's when this would come into
So
play.
this bill does not change the intent. I'm not familiar enough with this law to
No,
know what 40.
look, and I'm not a lawyer. I feel like maybe after the end of
Yeah.
my term, I might become one. But yeah, so my understanding is from talking that, yes, it does not, my law does not affect intent whatsoever when it comes to that portion of our drug
But
laws.
again, just to clarify, I'm still slightly confused. The
Look, I think
the
that
person who would sell whatever kind of pill, I mean, as you may know, students all the time are selling their own ADHD medication, which is a felony count on each one, and I'm aware of that. But the students who might have something that they're selling and there's fentanyl in it and they don't know it, students or adults, I mean, it doesn't have, the person would be liable under this because of,
So my understanding with our drug laws, that's a defense people make currently, like, oh, I was selling cocaine, but it was really heroin. So
Yes.
that's definitely a defense that someone can make to a jury.
right? So okay, and, but this is more, it's about detectable amount and the shape, size.
Right, it's
and
got to
look of
like
it.
look like it reasonably would appeal to a child.
Okay, all right. I'm asking these questions because there's a lot of vagueness in here for me, and so that's why I'm trying to understand where it lands, because I don't have the criminal law background. So, thank you.
I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Rep. Marcel for a question. Representative Marcel.
Thank you, Representative Schlegel. Just very briefly, I heard Representative Freeman ask you something that it triggered something in me about kids getting, teenagers getting this fentanyl, because there are gummy bears and all of that stuff with THC in it. So what happens if the person who got it and then gave it to or sold it to some of his friends? If they said, yeah, bring us some too, and you went and got it, and you thought that you were getting THC gummy bears, and it turns out to be fentanyl in those gummy bears, how do we not throw that young person away for life? Because 99 years is life.
So again, I'm not changing any of our intent laws when it comes to our already very well-established drug laws. So I'm not changing at all the statute when it comes to the distribution. All I'm saying is if it's fentanyl that appeals to children, then this would be the sentence. And so I really would suggest to everybody not to sell drugs, but what a travesty if somebody is buying something where they think it's THC and it's fentanyl. So I know Dustin Miller passed a great bill where you can get fentanyl strips. I mean, if you're going to make the poor decision to sell drugs, I would hope that you're not going to inadvertently give someone fentanyl and kill them.
I would hope so too. I'm just thinking of people, because you made a good point. They make it look like gummy bears or Skittles, and they do the same thing with THC. The THC, however, is not something I support either for minors or for children or for young adults. However, they do buy those, and there's someone. They were on a field trip, as Representative Freeman said, and they said, well, here's my money, bring me some back, and somebody went and got that and brought it back to them. Would they become then the distributor for 99 years? And again, I get what you're trying to do. Fentanyl is a real problem on our streets. The question becomes, incarcerating them, I don't believe we can incarcerate ourselves out of this. We have to find other ways, But thank you anyway. But that's my concern, because there are so many different gummy bears and candies out there that have other things in it, and people may not know unless they had the ability to test it, like you said. So are we going to put something in this bill that gives some free testing strips?
That's not in this bill. I would first say just don't deal drugs. That would be my default position.
That would certainly be mine too, but at the end of the day, it's out there on the street.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Rep. Mandy Landry for a question.
Just two quick questions. One from last time. Did y'all, I assume you worked on this with who, the DAs or who else?
I drafted this bill.
Okay, you didn't work with the DAs Association
I
on
did
it?
not.
Okay. Did they give testimony in committee? I'm
So
not on the
Arkansas
committee.
just passed this law. So I looked at our laws, and then Arkansas looked at the DEA's, and then obviously I helped our
So
drafters
Arkansas,
here. Passed a similar bill like this, just recently.
but you think they base theirs on
I
some
could not
data? Is
tell
that
you
what you
what
said?
they based it on. I mean, what I can tell you is that the DEA in 2022 sent out this warning, just saying that this is the new trend for the drug cartels to sort of manufacture these drugs like this, and then they're finding them in 24 states. So I think it's sort of an issue that's sort of percolating up.
Okay, but our DAs Association either did not take part or did they testify in committee?
If I
I
can
wasn't
remember,
there.
because the DEA's Association, I know did on HB7. I don't think they
Not
came
sure
to
on
the
this
table.
one. And this is a general question that often comes up with fentanyl and observation, and maybe you agree that it is very lethal, correct?
Correct.
And so if I'm selling this product, why would I risk killing my future customer by targeting it in this way? It just almost doesn't make sense to me why you would, give something away or target someone with something that is so highly lethal. Did you find a reason for that or an explanation for that when you were researching this?
The DEA's letter, I have it here. I mean, might be something good for you to reference in terms of, I don't think they went into why they're doing it. They just are doing it. I'm assuming that they want to make addicts.
Well, it is a highly lethal thing, as you just said.
Yeah, no, it
right,
is,
for
but,
someone
I mean,
to
you can
test out.
Yeah, if you could go to the DEA's, it was in August 2022. They'll show you the pictures of it, and it
If you
just
could
says-
send it to me, that's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah.
And so Arkansas chose
Passed a similar
25
bill.
years.
What?
Arkansas chose 25 years as a minimum.
I'm not sure what their sentencing range was. I modeled ours off of similar laws when it comes to hurting a minor, and so that's the sentencing range we chose.
Like for abuse of a minor.
Yes, correct. For sexual battery of a minor.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Representative Jordan for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Schlegel, I'm looking at 4967 right now, and I know under the current statute, if
Wait, I can't read that.
if you're convicted for distributing less than 28 grams, you can get 5 to 40 years, 28 to 250 grams, 7 to 40 years, and you have those schedules. And then I was looking at your bill, and I got to tell you, I mean, I'm a little confused, and so hopefully you can clarify this.
I chose not to put the weights like the fentanyl bill was last year. If it includes fentanyl and it appeals to children in a way, then this applies. It has
Right.
nothing to do with how much fentanyl's in there.
Right, and so that gets to the heart of where I'm going, and I get it. My thing is, if you sell it to a minor, you sell it to somebody that's a child, or distribute it to somebody that's a
Distribute to
child.
anybody, right.
Let's
You
just
can-
say distribute. I don't want to get into the sale.
It's not about distributing it to children.
But that's my point. So if this were clearly or solely relegated to the distribution to children, I might be, more inclined to go with you on this. Because when I looked at this, when I said appeals to minors and it looks like gummy bears, it could look like Skittles and all that, I certainly don't want minors ingesting, I don't want anybody ingesting fentanyl. But I certainly don't want minors to ingest fentanyl under any circumstances. But when you say appeal to minors, but you actually distributing it to an adult, that's a different kind of scenario for me. So somebody could distribute, because we're talking about high school parties, we're talking about children, all these different scenarios that are specifically relegated to children. And I'm okay, I get that. And I understand the thought behind the bill. But if you're telling me that, you know, two people could be somewhere, a adult-only facility, and one gives fentanyl to the other, but it's in the shape of a gummy bear, and they're both, I don't know, they're both 60 years old. And this same statute applies, and we're talking about the 99 years on that. I feel a little differently about that. I mean, is there any way that you would be open to amending the bill just so that it pertains to minors? Because if that's the case, then again, that's a different deal. But if we're talking about two adults, I'll be honest with you. If you got two adults and they're consenting adults, and you know what,
Well, I mean,
they want to do
first of
they
all
want to do
have to be-
fentanyl. That's
They have to
on
be-
them.
Yeah, no, I can understand if you want to be a no, but no, I'm not amending it.
So let me ask you this: if we have two adults and they both know that the gummy bear is laced with fentanyl, and they both decide that they want to use it, then we're going to penalize the other person for a conscious choice or even an addiction. I don't want to delve too deep into that, but if two people want to partake in drugs,
So Rep. Jordan, they had to violate 4967A, which is the manufacturer distribution laws. They're already violating our drug laws. This is not like we're like
Yeah,
two
but people-
adults.
I
let's
mean,
play
look, people
fentanyl.
already
This is
violating-
This
Yeah, well,
is violating the drug laws. So, and then if it's in a manner of which appeals to children, the fentanyl's in a manner of which appeals to children, then this law would apply.
all right. So tell me, do you know the penalty for manufacturing crystal meth?
I do not.
All right. It would probably go back to the statute and go back to some of the weights. I'm sure it's somewhere in there. But so we already have people manufacturing and, producing drugs. Fentanyl, I will agree with you, is somewhat different than some of these others, but they all have the potential, the hard drugs, and they all have the potential to kill. So, I mean, children, in the way that this thing is phrased.
Is there a question coming, or?
Yes.
Okay.
My question is, are you of the opinion, or is it your goal that two consenting adults know that it's fentanyl, that if one distributes it to the other, that then the person who did the distribution is subject to these 99 years?
I would think you're already subject to breaking our drug laws. I mean, if
I
you're
understand.
if you're distributing fentanyl, you would be breaking our drug laws.
I'm not asking about us breaking the drug laws. I'm asking about the penalty and the repercussions of breaking the drug
Again,
laws.
if you're violating, all I can say is if you're violating statute 4967A, in which the fentanyl appeals to children, like in the shape of gummies or Skittles, you would be violating this law.
I understand you're manufacturing to appeal to children, but you're distributing it to adults. If
I would hope you wouldn't distribute to
what-
anyone.
no,
I mean, I
what
guess that's the hard part, is like.
Members, if you
I
don't
hope-
mind, hold it down. Thank you.
I just hope we're not selling fentanyl to anyone, because it's the #1 killer of people from 18 to 45. We are literally in an epidemic, an opioid epidemic. We should not be coddling to anybody who's selling fentanyl, whether it's an adult or children, and certainly if you're making drugs to appeal to children. It's not acceptable.
No, and look, I don't disagree with you on that, but would you agree with me that when the producer or users of certain type of drugs, it becomes a mental health condition or it becomes a health issue, and when people look a certain different type of way, that it becomes criminalized?
Look, as a counselor and an addiction counselor, I have a lot of empathy for addiction, and I have no empathy for drug dealers. So
That's not my question.
I'm not even sure what your question is.
No, I thought it was clear. I'll ask it again. Do you agree or disagree that when the distributors and users of certain type of drugs, when they look a certain type of way, they call it a mental health crisis or an addiction, and when they look a different type of way, it seems to be criminalized?
Look, when I see people that are struggling with addiction.
Not my question.
I mean, I don't think I
It's
can
either a
answer
yes
your
or no question. I mean, you can answer.
Representative Jordan, you asked a question, you let the author
I
answer
mean,
the
can I say
question.
no comment? Because I don't know everybody's intentions or how people look at everybody. All I know is that I care about people who are struggling with addiction, and I care about people who are suffering from it. So I want to prevent that from happening, especially to children, and thus the reason I'm passing this law.
I understand. I appreciate your non-answer. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Wilford Carter for a question.
Who would, thank you, Mr. Speaker, Representative Schlegel, who decides if this drug or is attractive to kids, to minors? We're not talking about manufacturing the drug, or we be talking about not necessarily manufacturing. We talking about people that selling the drug, right?
We're talking about people selling the drugs, but they don't have to be selling it to minors.
That's right. So
Right.
you're selling to an adult, and one of them look like a Mickey Mouse or something. Well, then that would be a violation of the statute. But
If fentanyl is shaped like Mickey Mouse,
Yeah.
I would think that
Okay,
directly
all
would,
right.
yeah.
So if you sell to, how broad is this discretion? What I'm saying, this is not exclusive.
Selling fentanyl that looks like Mickey Mouse, this law would definitely apply.
I would agree with that.
That's
but,
how-
But
yeah,
there are other examples that one can come up with that's not Mickey Mouse. So I'm asking you, the trial fact, the judge or the jury have to decide, or does the DA decide
Yeah.
the bill based on whether or not he thinks this is attractive to minors, or will the trial fact have to make a finding that the jury or the judge that this drug, as you be selling it, it's within the statute, that it fit the definition of a drug, fentanyl, that's attractive to minors.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that.
Okay.
I mean, I think people could use their common sense that Skittles appeals to minors.
Right.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, and I think we go on the right track, it's not the district attorney, but the trial fact will make the ultimate finding that this drug is appealing to minors, and that's why you're getting the enhanced penalty.
Right, and I mean, we give guidelines too in the law of what that actually looks like.
But these examples in the bill is not exclusive. They just are some examples, right?
Right,
There can
that's
be
right.
other.
That-
So a trial fact may have different conclusions. See, you got two people charged with the same thing. I'm asking this question. Two people charged with selling fentanyl and to an adult. They're selling to somebody, not necessarily to a minor. And the trial fact in one case can find that, oh, this is attractive to minor, and a trial in another fact in another case can say, well, this is not attractive to minor, and the punishment is 20 to 99 years. So I think we should. Do you agree our law ought to be consistent and ought not be too suggestive or too? It should be specific. The violation should be specific so everybody know what they're facing. Did you agree with that much?
I believe my law is specific enough when it comes. I think people could understand and use
Representative
common sense.
Marcel, why do you rise?
Mr. Speaker, I cannot hear the questions and answers. The members are speaking over the author and the person that's doing the questioning. I can't hear.
Members, please hold your conversations down. Thank you.
I'm just saying, do you agree that a criminal law, ought to be specific and be interpreted by whoever the trial fact is, basically the same way?
I think my law does that, yes.
Okay. If two people charged with the same crime in this case happen to go to different trial facts, they can make different conclusions as to whether or not this particular drug at the time, this fentanyl, is interpreted to be something that appeals to minors. So that's kind of broad, don't you think? That's kind of.
I think my law is specific.
It's kind of what you think appeal to minor may not be what I think appeal to minor, and the bill doesn't limit.
That would be up to the jury.
Well, that's the problem. It depends on who the person is. The jury bring its biases, or the trial fact bring its biases to the determination of whether or not this is appealable to minors. That makes the law so broad and so
I do
the
not think
outcome
this
is
law is broad. I think it's not broad. So I know that might be your opinion.
Well,
and
we disagree.
I guess you might be a no again on this bill, but that's okay.
Well, thank you. We disagree, and I just feel like, and apparently you don't agree with me, that the law should be specific and limited interpretation. So anybody that's confronted with this
Questions
law,
and answers.
well, that's what I am. I'm actually she agree with this, but this
I do not agree.
You
So
don't
I
agree?
think the
Okay.
law is sufficient, yes.
Subjective, broad law is okay with you. Okay.
Representative Jordan for the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Look, members, I will tell you, before the discussion on this, and this is why it's great to debate these bills. Prior to listening to the debate on this and looking at the bills and thinking some of this out, I would have been perfectly okay with voting for a bill if it were related to minors. Here's the problem that we have with this bill. Current law has the weights attached, and they have years and penalties attached to the weights. This bill does away with all of that. So there's no limit. So it can have a gram, less than a gram, just any trace of fentanyl in it, and then these penalties would apply. Let me just tell you, there was a study done some years ago. 90% of all U.S. bills, dollar bills, have traces of cocaine on them. Just traces of cocaine. You test them, 90% of all U.S. bills have that. Now, you're talking about a minor amount mixed in with this, because we're taking away the grams, and now when you do that with kids, I understand, and I'm all right with that. When you're talking about adults, that's a totally different issue. And for that reason, I will be voting no on this bill. I would ask you to vote no, but because I know somebody's going to print that, you know, these people voted no on distributing fentanyl to minors, I want to be very clear. This is not what that bill is about. If it were limited to minors, I would be in favor of it. Because we're broadening it way past that, I can't support it. Thank you.
Representative Schlegel to close on your bill.
I just ask for favorable passage.
Rep. Schlegel moves for final passage of the bills. Many of you are in favor, vote yea. All those opposed, vote nay. The clerk will open the machine. Members, are you through voting? Hilford, yea. Jordan, nay. Davis, yea. Wilder, yea. Coates, yea. Weibel, yea. Villio, yea. Please get to your seats. Bacala, yea. Muscarello, yea. Are you through voting, members? Guyman, yea. Clerk will close the machine. 91 yeas, 13 nays. Rep. Schlegel moves. The bill is finally passed. Rep. Schlegel moves to adopt the title and moves to reconsider the vote by which the bill finally passed and lay that motion on the table. Without objection, show order.